This is Marc Colinares. Let me welcome you to another edition of HDI Cyberspace video presentation. And today, we're gonna discuss the outcome of the Copenhagen Environmental Summit. And with us is Ms. Karen Kim Monton, who is at the same time a registered nurse.
Thanks, Mark. I am glad to be part of this presentation, and I would like to join you to watch the presentation as we discuss issues of great concern.
A furious final 2 days of climate diplomacy and presidential brinkmanship that produced 2.5 pages called the Copenhagen Accord. A deal vague at times in meaning, rejected by some, lacking any teeth, of the Copenhagen Environmental Summit that could have formulated a concrete and unified actions to address climate change.
This particular text of the political declaration produced between President Barack Obama and big developing countries at the UN Climate Conference falls far short from our expectations.
The 11-hour deal may ultimately be seen as another halting step in a slow, painful evolution in the global fight against climate change. The 2-decade-old effort to negotiate coordinated cuts internationally in carbon dioxide and other industrial, transport, and agricultural emissions blamed for global warming.
The conflicts of many interests have marked those talks from the beginning. The division between the rich and poor nations, the rivalry between US and Europe, the developing world's cleavage between the poor and middle-class countries, the interest of the oil states, and the concerns of the island states endangered by the rising seas.
This interest and more played out in the 2-week UN meeting, which ended unprecedentedly large, working on summit on climate, involving 110 presidents and premiers. The spotlight fell mainly to the two of them, leaders of the two biggest polluters, China's Premier Wen Jiabao and America's Obama.
The declaration touched on major elements of the climate story, sometimes with scant detail, always with no legal obligations attached, whereby nations agreed to cooperate in reducing emissions, with a view to scientists' warnings to keep the temperature from rising more than 2 degrees Celsius above pre-industrial levels, that is, 1.3 degrees Celsius above today's average temperatures.
Further, the developing nations will report every 2 years on their voluntary actions to reduce emissions that will still be subject for international consultation and analysis. The rich nations will finance a 10 billion a year, a 3-year program that will fund the poorer nations' projects to deal with drought and other climate change impacts and develop clean energy.
The declaration also set a goal for mobilizing $100 billion a year by 2020 for the same adaptation and mitigation purposes.
Indeed, the 2.5 pages Climate Accord is a small step in a long process faced by the fact that time is an essence for all nations to come together and agree on a concrete, unified, and binding action, much so that the effects of climate change intensifies every year, or the outcome of the Copenhagen Conference signals that the world has to face a much more devastating effects on climate change before body of nations fall on their knees and come into a unified agreement to address climate change. Hope we can still have time to avert it.
Thank you for watching. And again, this is Karen Kim Monton, and I hope that you will send this video to your friends and your relatives.
And this is Marc Colinares. Let me end this by saying that the outcome of the Copenhagen Environmental Summit signals for all nations to shelve their individual interest and agree on a binding and unified action to address climate change. While we still have time to avert the inconvenient truth, the Earth's doomsday.